Viewer discretion is advised.
I bet you have no idea how this man got all of his money. No clue. Also, the Hornets have been awful since he bought them. The Hornets are the team owned by Crying Jordan, hasn't had much to smile about, whether they are named the Bobcats or the Hornets. Really, this expansion team hasn't had much to celebrate, and in 2011/2012, in a shortened season, they finished with a record of 7-59, the worst winning percentage in NBA history. They did have Bismack Biyombo holding it down in the middle, though, and currently they have Dwight Howard. That should trigger you. Dear Charlotte Hornets, thanks for passing on Lillard, Drummond, Beal, and Draymond Green for me and my horribly ugly jump shot. Signed, Michael Kidd Gilchrist. Bobcats, whatever. What's in a name? Apparently, sucking. The weird history of the Charlotte Hornets spans 29 seasons and is a collection of relocations, name changes, and dumb moves, which all add up to being the third worst franchise in the NBA. From their inaugural season in 1989, the Hornets enjoyed early success and then financial trouble as they relocated to New Orleans 17 years ago. Then the league re-expanded and gave Charlotte another team, and this one is a total dud. Since it's too damn confusing to separate who was what, if you take all the years the team has played in Charlotte, you have 29 seasons, only 10 of which a fan of the squad saw postseason basketball. No finals, 15 losing seasons, and only winning 36% in the playoffs make this team so bad even his airness can't save them from sucking ass. In this blowout, no member of the Thunder scored more than 18 points, as Kevin Durant, when he was likable, led the team. Hasheem Thabeet came off the bench and outscored Russell Westbrook. He had 13 points and Russ had 12. This was over at the half, the score being 64-24. Only one Bobcat scored in double digits, Jeffrey Taylor, who had 10 points. Kemba Walker and Desanya Diop played 19 minutes each and didn't score a bucket. That gets an early damn, son. The focal point of a hilarious, unconfirmed 4chan post involving excrement.
As I'm upside down, diarrhea begins to fly out of my ass and out the leg of my shorts.
Hugo the Hornet brings the hive alive like no other creepy blue bee with oddly buff legs could. His name was chosen after a naming contest. Hugo was a hurricane that devastated Charleston, South Carolina in 1990. The overgrown insect once caused a lengthy delay after a trampoline dunked through a ring of fire, which is ironic because he was one of the secret players you could unlock in NBA Jam.
He's on fire!
Though Spectrum Center hasn't been the site of much good NBA basketball, it's only seen 3 playoff series, all of them ending in L's. The arena was the site of the first ever 16 seed beating a 1 seed when UMBC beat on UVA like Leonard got beat in Full Metal Jacket. Also, the NBA All-Star Game was supposed to be there in 2017, but it got canceled because
boys have penis, girls have vagina.
the Hornets, in their varied and confusing history, have rarely had the time to cheat. They have been too busy sucking. Vlade Divac brought both himself and diving over from Europe, as the Hornets center's constant flailing and drama earned him the nickname Floppy Divac. You know you're in trouble when the big selling point of your offseason is replacing Kemba Walker with Terry Rozier, whose spaghetti and ranch sandwiches are probably the true origin of COVID-19. The Hornets picked up 2 twins, Caleb and Cody Martin, whose stats combined to make 1 NBA player. Don't worry about this rough period in your franchise's history. I'm sure ownership has a pragmatic, well thought out plan to return you to the glory of first round exit. A building that was revived for one last season in order to witness an 18-win Bobcat team in 2004, the Charlotte Coliseum was so forgettable that for several years after the stadium was demolished, highway signs still directed people to the arena that didn't exist. Finally demolished in 2007, City Park, a mixed-use development, stands on its former site. A plaque somewhere honors the former arena.
Hugo the Hornet, Charlotte. He's got a cool-looking face, but I'm just not a fan of the fuzzy body that makes him look out of shape. I'm also not a fan of bugs in general, but this was a pretty decent job, I guess. Rating, 5 out of 10. Charlotte Hornets, Kemba Walker. No disrespect to Kemba, but he's probably the weakest selection on the list, simply due to the lack of competition in Charlotte franchise history. In a vacuum, Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson were both probably better players in their primes, but Zoe only played 3 years for Charlotte and Johnson only 5 years. Kemba played 8 years and made 3 All-Star games and an All-NBA team. He is the franchise's all-time leader in win shares and points, and he would go on to rob the Boston Celtics of a lot of money. I respect the fuck out of that. Thank you. Charlotte Hornets, Adam Morrison. Much like Hobson, Morrison was a legendary college scorer who was drafted 3rd overall, proceeded to play horribly with his drafted team, then won rings as a bench warmer before falling out of the league entirely. Morrison's rookie season was easily his best, which tells you just how bad the rest of his short career was. He was supposed to be a knockdown shooter, but he couldn't shoot. Then he got hurt. All in all, he played in just 122 games with the Bobcats, proving once again how shitty of an owner Michael Jordan is. Charlotte Hornets. How do I even slander a franchise that has never even made a conference finals? Should I talk about how Kemba Walker was an inefficient elf? Or how Michael Jordan is a horrible owner who does nothing but smoke cigars and gamble recklessly? Oh, I got it. LaMelo Ball is hyped up as a future star when in reality he's an overrated hot dog who doesn't actually make the team better. I would trade him now while he still has value. He's a glorified Jason Williams with a famous family.
The Charlotte Hornets. You think nothing of them. Why would you? They've only been utterly forgettable as a franchise for the strong majority of their existence. Both incarnations. They are a team with no direction. They're not building for the future, yet they aren't serious playoff contenders. They merely fill a vacuum of forgettability, once in a while showing up to get wrecked by real teams that aspire for more than 35 wins in a season. But mocking this isn't fun. I want to focus on one man in particular, the head honcho who was hyped to be North Carolina's great savior. This man was going to put the Hornets back on the map in style. Behold, the GOAT! Michael Jordan. There's nothing else that needs to be said. The aura behind that name lingers on to this day. He's the gold standard that today's stars are compared to. Yes, LeBron's great and all, but could he have competed in Jordan's era, they still cry? And to answer that, yes, he would have. Talent plays out in any era. However, I'm not here to talk about his playing days. There are thousands of videos already discussing that in detail. Let's dig into his time after the hardwood. Transport yourself back to 1998. Michael Jordan is finishing up what is to be his final season in Chicago. Air Jordan has nothing to prove on the court, but a new hunger fills his belly. The executive realm. Running a franchise. His airness has always felt he's been slighted by the fat cats at the top. Jerry Krause always held him back from his true potential. They wouldn't listen to his best player on personnel decisions. He felt voiceless. His ego wasn't being fed at every moment. That fucking toad did nothing but take credit for his hard work. Where could his next challenge be but in this position? Truly uncharted territory. He wouldn't only prove Krause wrong, he would be better than him in every facet of his job. It would take a year, but Jordan would finally have his chance in the executive branch. The Washington Wizards. The team was awful, deep in a tank for their next savior. It was perfect. He could make the mark of a dynasty that will bring him into the halls of immortality. Of course, even the Bulls weren't built in a day, so this would take time. The Wizards were clay and he would mold them into his own image. Rod Strickland was an injured liability, so he could kindly fuck off. Christian Laettner could thrive on this team, though. The package to get him included their best player in Juwan Howard, but that wasn't important. Jordan has a monumental moment coming up. The Wizards have won the lottery. They will get the first overall pick in the 2001 draft. The ways they could take their franchise are innumerable. Who does he take with this selection? Kwame Brown. A man who would only develop into one of the greatest memes of that decade. The next picks became Tyson Chandler and Pau Gasol. He whiffed. Not that he saw that coming, but the world was put into a frenzy as he would return to the court. Personally, I don't think he ever wanted to come out of retirement, but it was probably part of the stipulation for gaining control of team operations. They help you, you help them. Even with Jordan back on the court, the Wizards still lacked that complementary piece to his legend. Jerry Stackhouse, there's a man who is worthy of feeding him. The price for such talent? Rep Hamilton, who would only go on to be a key contributor to the Pistons championship team in 2004. Even with his aging aura, Washington wouldn't go anywhere. Just mediocrity. Off the court, he would do nothing but shit on the team and the players he brought in. It was all of the ego, but with declining talent. Once he retired for the final time, the Wizards told him to leave and never return. He had felt betrayed again. He did nothing wrong in his eyes. Even though if you look at his transactions, he sucked. He tried to compete but failed miserably. He botched his draft choices. He set the team back years with his his moves. He made the team about him. It was justified as he had failed as an executive, but Michael disagreed. He didn't get enough time, he thought. Not to say Washington would be smart. The Wizards would replace Air Jordan with Ernie Grunfeld, which is a punishment they would feel for 15 years. Not exactly freedom. Despite this setback, Michael wanted another chance. He was slighted in Washington. A new opportunity needed the guarantee he wouldn't be merely used as a toy to bring fans to the arena. How about Charlotte? They're a terrible team as well. Struggling to find an identity of their own after becoming a new expansion team? It'll be like the old days with him as a Tar Heel. Number 23 coming home. People will love it. A face like Michael will only bring attention to this franchise. This time, though, he'll become an owner. He will buy a minority stake in the team on one condition. He gets complete control of basketball operations. He won't be fired like he did in Washington this time. He would get all the time he would need. They had the 3rd overall pick to play with in 2006, another chance at molding the clay. Who would the Bobcats pick in his first draft at the helm? Adam Morrison. He was often injured and terrible to rest. Now, there will never be confirmation if Jordan had any say in who was drafted that year. His power grab had just become official, and he would never dare admit he was wrong about a decision. That would only be giving Jerry Krause credibility. He still had a chip on his shoulder about that situation, you know. Him admitting fault would merely be saying that his naysayers had won. Why do you think he rarely talks about the Hornets these days? That would be opening him up for criticism. Let me play spoiler for a second. His tenure with Charlotte has been absolutely embarrassing to claim as one's own. Are you ready for a whirlwind of awful moves? Because it's turning like one of Jordan's windmills. Years upon years of bad trades and bad drafting. In 2008, Charlotte would pick DJ Augustine with the 9th pick. Who was selected immediately after? Brook Lopez. 3 years later, they would want a franchise-altering center. They would move heaven and earth, including Steven Jackson and Sean Livingston, to move up to select one man. Bismack Biyombo. He sucked and was gone in 4 years. The first-round pick they also gave up for such a prize? Tobias Harris. The next year, they were awful but lost the lottery to New Orleans. With the 2nd overall pick, they'd select Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who would develop into nothing. What did they pass up on? Bradley Beal. In 2015, the Boston Celtics were desperate to get their hands on Justice Winslow. They would offer Charlotte 4 first-round picks to select him 9th overall. This could have possibly included first-round choices from the Brooklyn Nets, and those could be potential lottery picks. But Jordan personally would refuse such an offer. Who did they hold out for? Frank Kaminsky, who would unsurprisingly do nothing in Charlotte. 2017 had the same thing happen. Head coach Steve Clifford was begging them to pick a budding prospect, but they dismissed his pleas. They would pick a flop in Malik Monk instead. Who did Clifford pound the pavement for? Donovan Mitchell. How about the year before, where they traded a late first-rounder for Marco Bellinelli? He'd be gone in a year, but who would they have picked if they didn't get him? Pascal Siakam. Not so easy, is it, Michael? Wait, I'm being too judgmental. What about his decisions away from the draft? How about trading assets, including a first-round pick in 2014 for Tyrese Thomas? Decent backup big man? Not a big deal, you say, but what ended up becoming of that pick? Yusuf Nurkic. How about trading Corey Maggette for Ben Gordon in a first-round pick that same year? Charlotte even got an earlier pick than the one they traded to Chicago. They pissed it away on Noah Vonleh. Gerald Wallace was good for a bit, before he was traded for a mere pittance of his talent. Remember when they brought in Dwight Howard, and then realized he was a cancer and traded him away for an anchor contract? Marvin Williams is decent, so why not grossly overpay him to force him to stay in this hellhole? It's at this point where one would suspect that Jordan is afraid of failure. He doesn't want to tank, even though his efforts have mostly failed miserably to this point, because he still has to prove that he's better than Jerry Krause. Look at the 2016 NBA free agent class. The salary cap is rising exponentially. Despite everyone playing eons over their heads and making the playoffs, it would be wise for the Hornets to sit this one out. Even if Nick Batum had a solid year in Charlotte, he would be grossly overpaid on the market like everyone else. He's useful, but signing him wouldn't make them a true contender. Hold on, just give me 1 second.
I'm about to bust. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the bathroom. Oh, good.
Insanity. $24 million a year for Nick Batum? Now look, I'm not saying Batum is a scrub. He's a decent role player and swingman, but you overpaid him by at least $10 million per year. You gave him as big of a contract as Harrison Barnes. And that guy was a key contributor to a championship team. Am I supposed to be shocked that his career year was just that? An abnormality. Batum hasn't just flopped, he's become a black hole, which is an unbelievably terrible investment for what is a budget that most businesses would dream for. Don't even ask how he's doing this year, it'll have you begging for NFL-style deals. This leads to the current situation, where the Hornets are locked into a bevy of awful contracts, including that of Kidd-Gilchrist, the second coming of Bismack Biyombo, Marvin Williams, Tyler Zeller, and one Nick Batum. Who does this end up hurting? Kemba Walker. You don't think he's good enough to be the face of your franchise, even though he's been that for years. The Hornets stumbled onto him at the draft and have been reaping the rewards of wasting his talent. He's carried this team through thick and thin, and you rewarded him by insulting his very being. Kemba's been the best player this organization has ever had. And you fucking lowballed him. Am I supposed to be surprised that he went to a team that appreciated his services? You lost him for next to nothing. You'd think that the Hornets would try to reassess their situation, perhaps tank for a chance at a top draft pick, but you don't know Michael. He's afraid of failure. He wants a piece of flesh in return for Kemba. How about a downgrade in Terry Rozier and an overpayment? Look, Charlotte, they won in the end! Aren't you excited for Hornets basketball? You aren't? Oh, you should be with being locked into a cell with those terrible deals they've signed. Now, here's the one thing I have never understood about this whole situation. As a player, Michael Jordan was about greatness. He never settled on anything less than the best for both himself and his teammates. His drive and hunger were legendary. Nowadays, as an owner, he's grown eager to suck on mediocrity's complacent teat. It's not just that he drafts and develops poorly, but like his gambling habit, he triples down on these terrible players and locks them into gross overpayments. He builds the Hornets to be competitive, not a true contender. A perennial 10th place finish in a weak Eastern Conference. This is what Jordan's legacy has fallen to. He's afraid to suck, so he's settling for being forgettable. His time as an executive has flopped harder than his stint in baseball. At least that was temporary. Just like in Birmingham, all he does is strike out. And he will continue to for the foreseeable future. Jerry Krause only laughs up above at his inability to convert his skills to this level. One more thing, LeBron, I hope you're paying attention because this is your future.
Enough from the clown.
Well. I guess there goes Moby isn't a man of his word after all. Considering that Moby said that he was done being a Lions fan if they drafted Aiden Hutchinson. And yet, he's still here in the fan base. And oh, by the way, Moby, we're still waiting on that Charlotte Hornets YouTube channel that you were promising everybody if the Lions drafted Hutchinson. We're still waiting on it, Moby. Where is it? We waiting for it. Come on, Moby, be a man of your word. Be true to your word. But I guess all Moby is all talk and no action. Because it's a lot easier to talk behind a keyboard than to actually be a man of your word. But yeah. For everyone questioning about if Moby was a bandwagoner or not, I just showed all the proof there is in the world because he's only a fan of the Charlotte Hornets because of LaMelo Ball. Because Moby is nothing but a LaMelo sexual. You know, the new successor to the Braun sexuals. So yeah, because all the Braun sexuals, it's always whatever team LeBron goes on, all the Braun sexuals become a fan of that team. Well, in this case, whatever team LaMelo Ball plays for, all the LaMelo sexuals will go join that team and be a fan of that team. And I'll just say this right here, Moby. If LaMelo Ball ever joins the Pistons, you will sure as hell will not be welcomed by me with open arms for that, without a shadow of a doubt. Because we all know LaMelo's gonna leave the Hornets, and Moby's gonna stab the Hornets fan base in the back when that happens. Once LaMelo finds out how much of an incompetent shithole the Hornets are under Michael Jordan. Yeah, notice how the Hornets have been really dog shit since MJ owns the team. And funny thing is, Moby thinks that MJ's a better owner than the Fords. No. The Fort's antics are child's play compared to other teams and other teams' ownerships. So yeah, this is just proof that some people don't do their own research. Hell, Moby didn't even do his own research with the whole Detroit Lions are the dumbest fan base in all pro sports argument, because he just based that argument off of people saying things that he didn't agree with, being like, oh, that guy said something I don't agree with. He must be a dumbass just like everybody else that doesn't agree with me. And notice how when I called him out for it, he stopped making that argument since. Funny how that works. But you know what, Moby? You no longer have to deal with me, because you know what? I'm done addressing you, your clown ass. Only time I ever address you is if something happens, or if I just feel like trolling you on my time during the time of day. And also anytime you criticize Moby or hold him accountable for his actions, he just mutes or blocks you like the coward that he is. Yeah, but you want to know why nobody goes in your comment section anytime you're right or wrong? Because you usually mute those people just to make yourself look good, just to cover your own ass. But you know what? I'm done here. I'm just, let's just go get this win against the Hornets. I'm just going to focus on the New York Jets butt fumble hate week this week. I'm done with Moby. I've just seen everything I need from this clown. You no longer have to worry about me, Moby. I'm done. I'm going to worry about somebody else. I'm going to go after people that are actually worth my time, that actually are true to their word, unlike you. If you're true to your word, Moby, then leave the Lions fan base and go join the Bengals fan base. Oh, wait a second, that's right. I talked to Dash and a couple loyal Bengal fans, and they said you aren't welcome in the Bengals fan base with open arms. That they will not welcome you in with open arms, too. I mean, you could go back to the Rams. Oh, wait. You can't go back to the Rams fan base. The Rams are dog shit as well. Yeah, you only went back to the Lions fan base because the Rams are no longer good. And because the Lions started winning again. But yeah, all I say, Hornets fans, is learn who Moby is, because he's gonna stab you in the back at the first sight of trouble. Like, it seems like the only team, cause that's a Moby for you. He only stays with a team when they're winning, but the first sign of trouble, he stabs the entire fan base in the back at the first sign of trouble. Seems like the only team he's ever loyal to is Ohio State, mainly because they're winning a lot. I mean, what's going to happen when Ohio State has a losing season at some point? Is Moby going to cut and run like he's done with every other team he's been a fan of? Or is he actually going to stay loyal to them? We'll have to see. Well, time will tell there. But yeah, I'm done with Moby. Let's go take out these bugs. And it's time we squash that bug known as There Goes Moby off the windshield. But anyway, let's go get this win against the Hornets, and let's focus on the Lions against the Jets this week. I'm out.